Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, how dare you, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Chocolate Saiyan, 10th Man, Paul Hall, Righteous Force, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
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 Anybody?
Good morning.
Hello, people in Discord. Good to have you all.
Good to be here.
Good to have you. Any signs of a physical, geometric, sphere edge horizon formerly known as Earth curve?
Not from Time, Illinois, in Pike County.
Hey, Arwin.
Not from Bad Mountain Bridge.
Hey, Arwin.
Hello.
Hello. Any signs of axial rotation?
No.
We're moving
No.
further and further away from people claiming Coriolis as we had last week. Thank God.
No, they have time is what's causing the Earth to rotate.
Don't jinx it.
Time's causing Earth to rotate. Oh, yeah. How are you going to vary that
No,
then?
the effect is a cycle. It always comes back to the forefront, even though it's been dispelled.
Think about it. It rotates one revolution per day, so time is causing the Earth to rotate.
I see. Well, you'd need to validate that as a causal relationship. For me, they've just taken the movement of the celestial bodies and extrapolated out our convention we call time, not the other way around. It's not causing the sun to move. Not causing anything ever. It's not a cause. Time doesn't cause things. Moving on. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
No evidence for the distance.
Nope.
Any scientific
Except it's over there, but
any scientific evidence of gravity?
nope, no way.
How about any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Seat of the pants.
Guesswork, eh?
Leaps of logic.
They're too busy just filling in their presuppositional cosmology, trying to keep everybody busy.
Speaking of presuppositional cosmology, any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon for all the fundies who believe the sky is a vacuum?
Will it answer the question if I just say gradient like 25 times? Will that work?
No, you can't have gas pressure gradient without a container either. It's a delta of a gas pressure, isn't it?
Oh, but Nathan, I had a bit of a debate with Ed the other day in the after show, and he argued that an antecedent is a straw man. Isn't that just great?
Sorry, he thinks the word antecedent is the same as straw man. Law of identity
He thinks that
violation.
in that case, it's a straw man.
Straw man, something that's not related, that you want to attribute to your enemy so you can burn it in lieu of the actual argument. How is it a straw man? It's something that's required to have gas pressure. It's the V in gas law, volume.
That's right.
That's the show I was talking about,
They,
Owen.
they presuppose that, or Ed, I guess, presupposes that you're taking away all the other extra factors like gravity because you just don't believe it's true. So from that perspective, it seems like he thinks it's a straw man. It's a straw man to the rest of the supposed arguments that he thinks he has.
It just contradicts his religion, that's all it is. It's not a straw man.
Yeah, that's right.
Any
But he
evidence?
calls it a straw man, though.
Yeah, they do that a lot. They just name that random fallacy when they get beaten.
That's right.
Any evidence the R value, Earth radius?
Not really.
At best, what you've done here is disprove the radius. At best.
At best,
Yeah.
all you would have done is debunked Earth radius. Wow.
That's right. Just the wrapping around of the entire universe just flexes a little. It's almost like a what is it? One of those picture books that you open up and then it unfolds, right? In a way, by changing the radius, it's like the entire unfolding of the galaxy also changes with it, like opening one of those books.
At best.
Yeah, they're called pop-up books. Yep.
Yeah, right. Those are.
What about that molten iron
Well, they-
core then at the centre of that presupposed spherical Earth?
No,
Despite,
no
hold on
molten
one
core.
second. Despite everything, did you want to add something? 'Cause your mic's wide open and we can hear all your background noise.
Oh, sorry.
The general opinion.
Yeah, we can still hear it. Thank you. Excellent. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth? Hello, Sleeping Warrior.
Only cartoons in books, Nathan. No evidence that we can go below about 8 miles for the Kola super deep borehole. That's about as far as we know.
It's not even that. Like 7.5 or something like that.
We can round it up.
But there's
Didn't
some
even
really good
hit the
descriptive
full 8.
animations. Though.
What's going on, brother? All right.
I keep thinking of a Tootsie Roll Pop when you ask this question.
Sorry, I heard Owen say there's a really good description and then he got cut off. Go on, Owen.
No, there's a really good descriptive. There's good descriptive visuals on what it's supposed to be, though. It's getting better.
Oh,
They're
the graphics.
explaining it better.
The graphics are improving all the time.
Yes, I've seen this amazing animation, like right at the start of this video.
Have you seen the progression that somebody did? It might have been on Russian Vid's channel, where he showed all of the different universal globes, starting with the one with a little plane with a banner behind it with universal written on, flying around it, and it looks absolutely shocking in black and white. And over time, incrementally, the graphics get better.
No, I've
No,
not
I
seen
think
that, but it's a logical progression
but-
as computers develop. They can create whatever narrative they want, and pretty pictures are enough to persuade people. I mean, how many times have you heard them say pictures from space? Yeah, they're all pictures, aren't they? None of them are from space, though.
Can't be from
Funny
space.
enough, though, Universal was able to get almost an exact replica of the supposed sphere that we live on. And they were touting that as their symbol in 1927. Yet we didn't go out into space at that point yet, did we? How did we get a full look at what the Earth looks like from up there, but not have been up there yet? It's a little weird.
They predicted it.
They predicted it. Yeah.
Did anybody catch the Russian Vids video again? As he's as we're on the subject of Russian Vids, he did Bill Murray. He juxtaposed Bill Murray singing Star Wars. I think it's Saturday Night Live with the Trump in the Oval Office showing the new flag for the space agency that they've just launched. Did anybody catch that?
The
No.
Space Force.
No.
Let's take a step back. Was anybody aware that they'd just launched a new space agency?
No.
Space
Tell us all
Force.
about it.
I don't know. I'm not an American. I don't watch TV. I got this from Russian vids. Did I not mention that? I was hoping you could tell me.
My son just asked, America's got a new flag?
Very huge budget.
Say again, Neil. Your son asked what?
My son just came by and said, America's got a new flag?
No,
There's
new
a Space
space.
Force flag now.
Space Force,
that
exactly.
Surprisingly, looks a lot like the Star Trek symbol. Amazingly enough.
Well, they've all got vectors on them. I know it does look like the Star Trek vector, but they've all got vectors. If you look closely enough at all the various different patches, they've all got vectors on them.
Yep.
Again, I got all of this from Russian vids. I haven't done any of this research. I haven't got a clue. I lost interest as soon as I found out Earth was flat and space was fake. I stopped watching science at NASA and the NASA channel. Although it's not called the NASA channel. That was Math Powerland's channel name for a while. Coincidentally. Check out Math Powerland, the guy who woke me up to this subject. But either way, I completely lost interest in it. Like every single time I used to watch science at NASA before I came across this subject, it would leave me very empty and hollow each time I watched one of their videos, and none of it was real. And it even said in the bottom corner, visualization or artist's depiction, things like that. So you weren't not. It's not like they weren't telling you that it wasn't real, because it was right in your face. But at the time, I didn't appreciate that what they were illustrating wasn't real. I was just like, it's a shame they can't actually show me some real pictures of this stuff. So I'd kind of got that feeling already before coming to this subject. So it wasn't exactly a massive step for me to go, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. They never show you anything ever. It's always an artist's illustration or a graphical depiction.
Yeah, I remember sitting watching some of that and thinking, I can't wait till this stuff, they show us the real stuff of what's going on up there, all this nonsense that I'm looking at.
Yep.
I mean, it's so bad. On top of them telling you this is not real, this is obviously some CGI or artist shit. Then you're waiting for the real stuff, and you're like, when does the real stuff get here? Like, yeah,
Right.
really
Just-
When are they going to
just one
unveil the
second.
secret space footage
I just
that
want to
they
read
kept for
Gleam's comment.
themselves
Hold on.
because the world can handle it?
Hold on, someone in the chat's more informed than we are. Thanks very much, Gleam. It says, the Space Force was set up to, quote, ensure no one sets up a military establishment in space. So, just to recap, they are setting up a military establishment to void the space treaty. Yeah. I mean, thank you. That makes a lot more sense. Brilliant. Thank you for the information, Gleam. However, they're not setting up anything in space. Space is Narnia. Outer space isn't real. They're definitely not setting up a Star Wars platform up there to keep us safe. That's just a lie. Because space is a lie. Space isn't real. Violates natural law. But that's what they're saying they're doing. Thank you very much for informing us, Gleam. Now we know. So, just so that no private people, just in case Musk gets the idea that he wants to set up a Star Wars space platform with lasers to kill us all, best that we do it first, according to this, new information from Gleam, but probably common knowledge to everyone else in the chat.
So it's like the space version of the Antarctic Treaty. That's cool.
Well, it's just a way of presumably black holing a load of money, right? Because nothing's going up there. There's no maintenance.
They can't say they needed a Hollywood basement force, so they just said Space Force.
Space Force.
But literally nothing is going to be happening in the sky in that regards, because the claimed area that they're going to be operating in is fake. It's like saying, we're going to set up a defence Narnia force just in case somebody else gets the bright idea of going through the wardrobe, or heaven forbid there's other wardrobes. So we better get into Narnia quick sharp and set up a military force there stop anybody else doing it. So, give me lots of money to set up my Narnia task force, and we're going to, establish a perimeter around Narnia, and, we'll keep it safe. We'll keep everyone safe. Is everyone all good with this? Everyone all good with this? I just need £10 from each of you to set up my task force in Narnia.
It's going to be great until somebody decides to nuke Imagination Land. Then you got a problem.
I don't see you giving me £10, Arwen. Come on, cough up. This is a worthy cause. We all need to be safe.
Black hole money pit is about right.
Have you not heard of Operation Fishbowl? They've already tried to nuke the sky. Come on.
Have you not heard of the Black Hand? Come on, give me some money out your till. You need to be kept safe. We're living in a world of protection racketism, or whatever the word is. Yeah, give us some money.
Godfather Part 2.
We're going to keep you safe. How are you going to keep us safe? No, you keep yourself safe. Stay safe. Stay home. Our world's a joke. Locked up in house arrest while they tell us that they're setting up a task force in Narnia. Isn't the world a beautiful place? That's if you pay
Come on,
attention.
Nathan. It's harder to fake space than it is to just go there.
You're right. It would be far more difficult to set up a studio and a soundstage and hire wires and fake the whole thing than it would be to actually send people to Narnia. I mean space. That's far more difficult.
That's actually an argument.
I know it's an argument.
Bloggers make that argument.
I know.
It's like,
it's nuts, isn't
what? Oh my god.
Do you have any idea how difficult it would be to fake
but
it?
It's just too expensive.
If that really was true, though, you wouldn't have any space movies actually be done in a Hollywood studio because they would all actually be in space.
Agreed.
Yeah, if it was that easy, you could just go in space. I mean, like what Tom Cruise is about to go in space, right? And film on the ISS as far as the news is concerned. Yeah. Why don't they just do that all the time if it's so hard to fake? Couldn't believe I had that argument with somebody. Like, are you serious? Are you even thinking? Are you even using any brain cells?
Going to
Just say-
through Hollywood is more cost effective.
Chocolate, did you say Tom is cruising space?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Right, shout out to Skeptic936. He gives me $10 and says, Space Force to defend against alien invasion.
Or like space farce.
They have released that UFOs are real now. Did you hear about that? So yeah, they have to create the Space Force to deal with these UFOs.
What UFOs?
The question would have to then be,
maybe
Don't go along with them. What
that's
are they going to do? Send aliens after you?
maybe that's how they'll go Tom Cruise to the ISS, right? Because as far as NASA's concerned, they can't get out of low Earth orbit.
the question would then have to be, what do they mean when they say alien? Because we all have this image in our head of, I don't know, greys or little green men or whatever. But they would have to define what they mean by alien. Because nothing's coming in or coming out of here, guys. Like what's his face? Bill Nye says, we're trapped in here, right? So what do they mean by aliens? Extraterrestrials from the planet Zog? What do they mean? There's not one out there. We're stuck.
Well, what does extraterrestrial just mean? Extra land or extra Earth?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be from the infinite plane that we don't live on, apparently.
Well, not
Well, it doesn't
necessarily
have to be
infinite.
infinite. It could just be more than we know about.
Exactly.
Sure.
Without speculating about the infinite nature, even in our described history, which is probably all made up, we've come across other, what would you call them? Races? Well, they're alien races from extraterra. They are extraterrestrials when you first encounter them. So who's to say that you wouldn't toddle off outside the area that we're already aware of, find another bit of land, and there's purple people as opposed to black people, orange people, yellow people, white people. You come across a slightly different shade and go, oh, what do you know? Extraterrestrials. And where did they come from? Did they come from up in little rockets? Sky penises like they send up from NASA? No. out towards the horizon, like all the other ones that have been found according to our history. Little Green Men sells a lot more TV, though. I mean, I love Dread Dwarf, and they're always encountering little green men of some description. Or simulants. Robots that we've made to replicate humanity. Nevertheless, the whole idea of aliens is nonsense. Sky vacuum aliens. No, we haven't got a sky vacuum to have aliens come from.
I wonder if they got tired of humans and stopped abducting people. Because you don't hear about that anymore, huh? All the abductions and alien invasions. You don't hear any of that too much anymore. It's like that
No
was
more
like
Barney and
a
Betty
slight
Hill?
error,
But
and then it stopped.
It seemed like it was a controlled information release in that regard. In other words, the whole lot's bullshit, right? So there are no aliens. But heliocentrism has got a sky vacuum with a high probability of other life out there. Therefore, you can play on that idea to reinforce the heliocentric programming. Why not? So you have the kooks, you put them in the paper when they claim they've had an alien encounter, and put it in and ridicule it, so that people are softened up to the idea. I think that's what's happening with Flat Earth, if I'm honest. Similar. In other words, you soften people up to the idea by trickling it out into the general consensus with ridicule, and then over time, as is happening, you get through the immediate disregard of it, and then you get to the stage where you want to discuss it or debate it, and then eventually you realise there's nothing to actually cling on to in terms of the current paradigm and religion of heliocentrism. So you end up with a flat earth paradigm working its way into the consensus rather than just telling people on the news, which I think would be disastrous. You know, people would go nuts. Shout out to Retro Bill, who says, true infinity doesn't exist in nature. Nevertheless, here's to infinity and beyond. Thank you very much for the super chat, Retro Bill.
Interesting that you used the word they want to cling on to something, and we got aliens called Klingons.
Just to go back to the gravity point for a minute, I find it unbelievable that ball earthers just flippantly dismiss or look past the problem with gravity. Well, look, you can't really do that, guys, because gravity was redefined in 1915 by Albert Einstein, who is the current position or the current authority on gravity in current physics. Now, you can bitch and moan and whinge about that as much as you want, but it doesn't change the fact that he is your current leading authority on gravity, right? General relativity. He describes gravity as an effect of the curvature of space-time caused by the uneven distribution of mass. The problem that any ball earth has got is you can't explain Newton's apple falling from the tree when you're applying general relativity because it makes incoherent babble. But we can explain it to a 5-year-old so he understands it when we say things like, the apple gains nourishment from the tree, it increases its mass overall, or its weight, whichever, and then eventually the stalk snaps, and at the moment that stalk snaps, it's then in a different medium, it's no longer connected to the tree, it displaces its medium because it's more dense than air. But if that apple was on a tree that was underwater, it wouldn't fall to the ground, because once it snapped its stalk, it would rise up to the surface because it's less dense than its medium. And a 5-year-old understands that. But when you start talking to them about Newtonian principles, eventually they get their head around it. And if you give them a little bit of maths, that might confuse them for a bit, but they'll get their head around it eventually. But then tell them about Einstein, and then all of a sudden they don't understand it anymore. And neither do any of the ballers, because they can't explain Newton's apple with Einsteinian gravitation, because it ends up just being poetry, the way that Max Planck describes it. Anything beyond experiment is just poetry, which is what happens. So even if you were able to eloquently describe Newton's apple with Einsteinian gravitation, we can do it much easier with experiment to support it, to demonstrate it, to prove it, and a 5-year-old gets it. So which is it? Is it the 5-year-old explanation that everybody can understand? Or is it the poetry that nobody can test because it doesn't have any experimental application, because it's conceptual and represented only mathematically with no experimental application whatsoever? That one argument kills your model, guys. So you can argue about satellites or GPS or all the other technologies that we have in the world and pretend that they're science. But if you guys don't have gravity, don't have a model, it breaks your model on that one point. We don't need to explain what's going on instead, although we can. We don't need to redefine all the new physics that we need to explain everything that we see. We just need to point out that your model doesn't work. And that's the end of your model with that one point. It bugs me when they ignore this and move past it as though it's, it acts like a force. No, you guys can't even explain Newton's apples falling from the tree. But let's not lose sight of the basics, because all of the ancillary arguments that follow on from ignoring that basics is something that you can all get your head around if you apply your model and come up with an explanation. But if you don't have gravity in the first place and you stop at that one argument, your whole model falls apart. Good luck explaining Newton's apple falling from the tree. Because unless you can get round that, guys, your model is over with that one point.
You're getting a response. Go ahead, Rumpus.
Anthony, are you aware that the Einstein's field equations resolve down to Newton's equations in our 3D world?
Yes, but maths is not reality, Rumpus, and it's not part of science.
Right,
hold on, how do you mean yes? No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
Completely different geometry.
Exactly, they do.
This already, Rumpus.
Completely different geometry.
Didn't we do this?
Newtonian field equations.
What geometry?
Don't reassert your claim. Show us. Show us. Show us.
Okay, let me go and get the link.
Let's postulate. Let's postulate that Rumpus is correct for a minute, Nathan.
Why? They're different geometry. Euclidean free space versus pseudo-Riemannian four space.
Observation to some extent.
Hold on.
They would be wrong, so they've got to match.
They're completely different geometries.
Yeah, I understand. But if they don't match the real world observation, in other words, Einstein's field equations must, by that claim, reduce down to Newtonian principles. But if it didn't, then that would debunk itself by virtue of it failing to match the real world.
But they do.
It's necessary for your model.
Sorry, are you showing us? Are you showing us them reducing down from pseudo-Riemannian four space into... I'm still talking. I'm still talking. One more time. It's not going to be a very long time that you stay here if you talk through me. You're going to show me pseudo-Riemannian four space boiling down to Euclidean three space when Euclidean three space with Newtonian bullshit works at a distance by magic.
Okay, I'm nearly there. Give me a moment.
Nearly there? What do you mean? The two are completely incompatible. They're completely different geometry.
No,
one is pseudo-Riemannian four space, the other is Euclidean three space.
And
give him time, Nathan. This is his creme de la creme moment. Let bask in it.
Field equations would go to Newtonian equations.
So do field equations cause things?
Well, they do, yes.
No, they don't.
No.
That's maths. It's abstract, you complete retard. Maths equations don't cause things, you complete idiot.
Well, okay, the maths does.
No, it doesn't cause things. These field equations from Einstein will not be causing anything ever.
They describe things that...
I don't care what they're describing. They're not causing anything.
The maths, yeah, the pieces of things on paper...
So his field equations for gravity, it's not causing anything.
The field...
It's not causing anything, you dumb fuck. Why aren't you acknowledging a word I'm saying, you ignorant twat?
Right, okay, what's the question again?
It's not a stupid question. It's a statement of fact. Fact. These equations for gravity will not be the cause of anything. Ever.
They describe reality.
I don't care what they describe. You're still not acknowledging what I've stated.
I am. We all know that things on pieces of paper don't cause things, but
no,
they describe
maths doesn't cause things. And field equations, in this case...
Causes. They describe causes.
Sorry, they describe causes? So they're not causes, then? They're descriptions.
They describe causes.
So they're not causes.
The pieces of dot, the pieces
Last
of
time, you can either say, that's correct, Nathan, or I'll kick you out, because I'm not going to do this 16 times. So these mathematical constructions, abstractions by Einstein describing pseudo-Ramonian force space are not causing anything.
They describe causes.
Right, goodbye. They're not. Goodbye. That's the end of your time here. They're not causes. It's not going to cause anything to do anything ever. He won't admit that because he's going to juxtapose it by asserting it is causal. It isn't. He's going to assert that gravity's doing things. It doesn't. He needs to obfuscate this point. So when I say it's not a cause, and he says it's describing causal relationships, it's an obfuscation tactic because he needs it to be a cause. He needs it to do things, and it doesn't. Also, he's completely lied. Pseudo-Ramonian force space is absolutely not translatable into Euclidean 3 space. These two things are totally incompatible. One has superseded the other. He's just a liar. Notice he didn't produce a damn thing. I just want to add that. I asked him to show us. He said, I'll produce it, of course. I'm nearly there. Where is it? No. Hasn't produced a damn thing. Just a lie. I know he's lying, and I'm going to tell my audience he's lying. He's going to lead you to believe that these two things, one length, breadth, depth, and pseudo-time, are compatible with each other when one was superseded by the other. The one that superseded Euclidean 3 space Newtonian nonsense is now conceptual only, mathematical only, abstract only, not causing anything. Now, he can't admit that because he needs cause. He needs it to do stuff, and it won't. So piss off, don't come back. Come back tomorrow.
He did kind of say, he did kind of throw it in there real quick. And he did kind of say, well, we all know things on a piece of paper doesn't cause anything. He did kind of just threw that in there in the midst of getting destroyed.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, Ruppy, we know. Something on a piece of paper doesn't cause anything.
But he went to the piece of paper to prove the cause.
That's nice.
He said he had. He said he.
What is he doing after that?
But they're not describing the cause. That's not what they're doing. Anthony should have picked up on this. They're describing an effect mathematically. Effects don't cause things either if you're describing an effect with maths. So what? It's not going to do anything. It's not going to achieve anything. It's not going to keep gas pressure here. Musings written down, maths on paper, come out of the head of mathematical people like Einstein, aren't going to give you any causes for anything, ever. That's the whole point. Abstractions. That's what maths is.
Let me just have a word to defend myself a little bit. I did notice that he was doing that. I just didn't get to my next sentence, which was going to be, well, just let me get it out. Yes, your mathematical field equations must, by your claim, reduce down, because if they didn't match, then it wouldn't be it wouldn't match the real world observation. They've got to. I mean, have you ever seen anybody try and work through Einstein's field equations? He couldn't get anything from that. Nobody can do it. That's kind of like unverifiable. But I also realize that maths is not reality. I always remember Red's rhetoric in, 2015 against Jeren? Maths is reality. Every time I hear maths, that's what I hear in my head, Red's rhetoric. So I was going to get to that point, Nathan. Just maybe not quite as quickly as you did.
My bad. Yeah, maths is not reality. You're right. Red rhetoric also rings in my ears when I hear somebody talking about field equations. We're not going to even get into whether or not the field equations he's describing work for more than one mass in a system.
Let me give an illustration to help out a little bit. I can describe that I have 4 pairs, and I can take 2 pairs away, and it will leave me with 2 pairs. The only problem is I don't have any pairs. So even though you can describe me having pairs, that doesn't mean your description of my pairs is reality, right? Because I have no pears in the house. There's apples and bananas, but no pears.
Yeah, Rumpus agrees. He says maths is the language of describing things. Yeah, descriptions don't cause things though, do they? So Einstein can describe a rock all day long, but the rock's never going to be weighing down on anything. It's just a description of a rock in his words and maths. So what? His description of it isn't going to cause anything. Also, we have this clever method that's useful for demonstrating this word. The method is called science, and the process of actualization is called experiment. So if you've got causal relationships, which is what's being asserted here with field equations and abstractions, but if you've got causal relationships, you can validate them with science, surprisingly. Einstein doesn't have any of that for his field equations. He's got abstractions and mathematics for his pseudo-geometry. That's what he's got. Now, if he had science, he could actualize his hypotheses. And actualization of hypotheses is experimentation. He doesn't have that. There's no experiments to back this nonsense. Just merely the musings and abstractions of the mathematical world of Einstein. Not going to cause anything.
Yeah, I was listening to a discussion between a creationist over evolutionist yesterday. It was on that Answers in Genesis. It was a bloke called Stephen, somebody from Liverpool. Obviously, Liverpool pricked my ears up a little bit, so I started to listen. And he was literally saying in the first 5-10 minutes of his presentation that anybody that doesn't apply experiment to their science is literally just you're talking nonsense. You've got to have experiments. And he was arguing it from the creation over evolution perspective. He was saying that there is no evidence anywhere in experiment that shows that any kind of type or kind has ever become any other type or kind of animal. It's always the same kind. I use that word loosely because it's a Kent Hovind word, but my point was he was relying on the strength of experiment and how nobody in science has ever demonstrated that experiment can prove that any part of any species has ever become any other part of any other species. It's never been done.
It's called a classification system, the taxonomic classification system, arbitrarily assigning groups to species. Species is part of that description in the taxonomic classification system. So to say that monkeys are baboons or whatever, you categorize them, that's completely arbitrary. So then to say within that arbitrary classification system, you can work outside of it to say that one has moved into the other. Well, you've arbitrarily classified one as one and one as the other. So it's working outside the convention that is the taxonomic classification system. Just by coincidence, QE asked me, or I was asked by, I think it was Neil, to read out something he'd left me and asked Master B. I don't know the background to it, but I'll read his quote from Rob Carter, who's a geneticist. It says, there was a geneticist calculated that every English person living in England is at most fifth cousins from every other English person living in England. End quote. Rob Carter, geneticist. And it's put under the bottom, West Virginia is blushing! Exclamation mark. Just thought I'd drop that in.
Can I drop something in?
Go ahead.
It's a Master B. You can post it. I'll read it. Today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments. They wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality. Nikola Tesla.
Could be talking directly about Einstein, couldn't he? Could be talking about Einstein with his pseudo-geometry, abstractions, describing what he claims are the causal relationships. Nope, no science, just maths. Did I shout out the most recent Retro Bill Super Chat? If not, I'm going to do it again. Since maths describes things, what number do you think describes rumpus? Number 2.
Number 2.
66.
No, number 2.
Definitely number 2.
Thank you very much for the super chat, Retro Bill. Really appreciate your support. You know how you say it's an incredibly important argument, gravity, Anthony? You know, it doesn't make the top 3.
It's one of the most important ones, though, because without gravity, they haven't got anything. They need orbits, they need planets, they need things orbiting the sun. That's the essence of the heliocentric model. It requires gravity as a force. Well, if you haven't got gravity as a force, then what have you actually got? You haven't got a heliocentric model. But yeah, there's a few things. I mean, gas pressure in a vacuum. I mean, Jupiter can't be a gas giant, can it? Because gas pressure can't exist in the. That's another big one they ignore. Lack of evidence of curvature, axial rotation. I mean, the housekeeping points are valid points. Ballers just glaze over them as though they're like, yeah, that's just Nathan rhetoric, as though Nathan rhetoric somehow like diminishes the point. It's ridiculous.
No, I don't mean housekeeping, because gravity is definitely a housekeeping question. It's definitely worthy about asking for daily, because they claim it as a defence. But in terms of, personally, this could be whittled down to just one, the black swan, if I'm honest. But in terms of the top 3, to debunk all aspects of heliocentrism, you only need Coriolis, the lack thereof, gas pressure not being able to be in existence without the necessary antecedent of a container. That's the second. And then top of the pile, as I said already, black swan. Well, in those 3, you're debunking the R value, which gives you all of your astronomical distances. You're debunking Earth as a sphere, again, if you debunk the idea that you've got a physical geometric sphere at your horizon. So that's ball Earth gone. Spinning, done. Coriolis, we don't have any. And then what else are you left with? Well, the vacuum that they claim the sky is. Well, you can't have gas pressure without a container. Well, the gravity doesn't even get a mention. It comes later. I realise why it's critical, because otherwise it wouldn't be a housekeeping question. Because their response is gravity.
Well, doesn't Coriolis, the lack thereof, Earth-based Coriolis, answer gravity from another angle? Because they need gravity if the Earth is spinning.
What is gravity? It's bending of a conceptual medium known as space-time. Well, if you debunk space, and space-time is in existence in the vacuum, then you've debunked space-time without having gas pressure, because the sky vacuum would suck it all away. So,
well, let me phrase it the way I thought it. The Earth is not rotating. Now, can they bring in gravity if the Earth is not rotating?
Maybe. I'm sure you
could
could weasel it in. It's just maths.
Rotating for gravity to work.
That's the thing with abstracts. You can do what you like with them, right? So it's abstract. So yes, I'm sure that could work. 10th man.
Well, from the time that the debate show has instructed me on the many forms of arguments from the ballers and us, they always fall back on gravity for a reason. Now, why do they do that? Because without explaining proficiently with any kind of real science to back them up, they could always go to this magical word, as we discussed earlier in the show, a force that's not a force, that's keeping the oceans in. And so it's related to the other questions, but like you said, it doesn't make the top 3, because if the Earth is not spinning, you don't need gravity.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying, but in terms of what they actually describe it as now with Einsteinian field equations, you haven't necessarily got any requirement for the spin in there. It's just, you know, if you're describing gravitational accretion, you don't necessarily have to have anything spinning. My point is that this is an abstraction, though. You can work the maths to do whatever you like. They make massive corrections to it all the time. What's the guy? I can never pronounce his name. A Japanese guy who talks about how
Michio Kaku.
Michio Kaku talks about the factor that they're off 10 to the however many, when in terms of how much stuff there is or isn't in the vacuum of the sky that doesn't exist. Well, obviously that's a mathematical incorrection that they're going to need to make at some stage to the abstraction that is their description. Well, yeah, they can weasel it in. So in other words, no. You can't just say, well, we're not spinning, therefore you don't need gravity anymore. They can still assert it. In the same way as you can say, well, we prove we're not on a ball. Well, they can say, well, we still need space, though. How we're arranged on this flat plane doesn't mean we haven't got space. Like the Flat Earth Society show. They still want the flat disk pancake to be flying up at 9.8 meters per second squared through a sky vacuum. Doesn't matter whether it's spinning or not.
Don't underestimate what we learn as we do these shows. I'm a little bit further down the road based on your shows and the excellent arguments that come from this show. What I'm saying is that you open their eyes that it's a mathematical construct, that it's not a force, that it's not, like you said, it's an abstraction, it's a conception, and they can't cause anything.
Well, that's true, but that's where Anthony comes in, because at this point, if this was a discussion between myself or yourself and a globehead, the discussion would now move to Newtonian physics, would it not, Anthony? They would juxtapose the current rhetoric with the out-of-date pseudoscience. Am I right?
Yeah, they always flip it. And what they always do is flip the cause and effect. They start acting, because like Einstein says that gravity is an effect of the curvature of space-time caused by the uneven distribution of mass. And once you get them to say effect, eventually, they get it. But the minute they start talking about gravity, it becomes Newtonian again and reverts back to the pre-World War I position. And they start acting as though it's a force again. It's not. It's not a force. It's an effect. So it stops the whole argument, but they always revert back to it. No matter how many times you get them to say it's an effect, they can't get it out of their head that it's an effect. They need it to be a force on their model, and they always flip back to it. So watch for the flip back.
Well, this happened on yesterday's show with Ed. He admitted right off the bat that gravity is an effect. And Paul said, well, effects don't cause things.
Newtonian compulsive disorder.
Say again, Owen.
It's a great descriptive word.
Hold on, say that again, Owen.
Newtonian compulsive disorder.
I love your labelling of random mental disorders that we come up with. I love it. Quick shout
They
out.
can't help. They know they shouldn't, but they just have to bring Newtonian gravity back into it.
Well, what do you know? We've got the 5 stages of loss on screen: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. And the reason it's so difficult in this particular arena with the debate, the reason we have no humility, is because the next step after you get past bargaining, which is what we're doing here, it's depression. Nobody wants to go that direction. Normally they get smashed and go backwards. Anger, you're a moron. Or, as I saw in the chat about 3 or 4 days ago, they go from bargaining to getting smashed to 2 steps back to denial. Well, you just don't realise the Earth's a sphere. I love it. Shout out to Cleary. I'm 20 pounds lighter during the day thanks to the sun's gravity. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Really appreciate your support, Cleary. Cleary's got a channel, by the way. Subscribe today.
Remember as well, when they flip back to Newtonian principles for gravity, they also flip back in Coriolis. So once you point out to them that we're supposed to see apparent deflection on Earth because we're on the non-rotating reference point, however you want to word it, we're on the thing that's turning, right? We're supposed to see apparent deflection, but we don't see any of it. They'll do one of two things guaranteed every single time. They'll either go to hurricanes and then just show them how anticyclones work because they spin the opposite way, impossible on their model. And if they don't go to hurricanes, they will go, yeah, but it's the conservation of momentum. All right, and that's just an excuse for why they don't see the apparent deflection. But if they don't see the apparent deflection because of conservation of momentum, then there is no Coriolis. And then they go, and then that's game over. But they don't even realize it's game over. They don't realize they're conflicted.
Got a shortcut for you with that. You said non-spinning reference frame, or words to that effect. The word is inertial, non-inertial spinning reference frame, right? So here's a quick shortcut for you. So the reference frame that you are on, if it's claimed we're on a spinning Earth, then the frame of reference you are on, attached to, is the non-inertial spinning reference frame. So the reference frame that you are on, if it's claimed we're on a spinning Earth, then the frame of reference you are on, attached to, is the non-inertial spinning reference frame. So the reference frame that you are on, attached to, is the non-inertial spinning reference frame. So the reference frame that you are on, attached to, is the non-inertial spinning reference frame. So the reference frame that you are on, attached to, is the non-inertial spinning reference frame. So the reference frame that you are on, attached to, is the non-inertial spinning reference frame. So the reference frame that you are on, attached to, is the non-inertial spinning reference frame. So the reference frame that you are on, attached to, is the non-inertial spinning reference frame. So the reference frame that you are on, attached to, is the non-inertial spinning reference frame. So the reference frame that you are on, attached to, is the non-inertial spinning reference frame. So the reference frame that you are on, attached to, is the non-inerti spinning reference frame. So, the reason it's described that way is because the observation is going to take place with you and everything around you not moving. So if you're on a roundabout, you and the roundabout are moving at the same rate, and as you look at the roundabout and everything on it, you're all stationary or non-inertial. But because you're going to be observing an effect of something moving, like a lamppost next to the roundabout, well, that roundabout is going to seem to move. That lamppost is going to seem to move. So you spin around, you look at the lamppost that's concreted into the ground, and it seems to move, even though it's concreted into the ground because you're spinning. Well, that's the movement being described with Coriolis. Now, that movement of the concreted lamppost is in the inertial reference frame. Now, Coriolis is a not actual force. Obviously, the thing that we're describing in the quote-unquote inertial reference frame is in this example, a lamppost that's concreted into the ground. But we're describing how it seems to move, hence it's in the inertial reference frame. Now, you're seeing it seem to move because you're on a non-inertial reference frame. Are you with me so far, Anthony?
I am.
Okay.
I am, but what I would say is these terminology gets very confusing.
Not what you're going to say. I'm making a point. Just need to check that you were following along. So far, I'm on a non-inertial reference frame to have this observation. That's all the bit I need you to say. Yes, I understand that bit.
Yes, I understand that bit.
Perfect. So if it's a non-inertial reference frame, what is there to conserve precisely?
Oh, well, the momentum, Nathan. That's the conservation of momentum. Are you a moron?
Of a non-inertial reference frame, Anthony?
Oh, but we are moving, Nathan.
The only observation that can have Coriolis as part of the description will be taking place from a non-inertial reference frame. There's no inertia to conserve. Now, if you start describing what's being conserved, you're no longer talking about what's being observed from the non-inertial reference frame. Coriolis is observational, Anthony, and will always, without exception, be observed from a non-inertial frame of reference. As soon as you start describing things conserving momentum, you're describing something happening in an inertial reference. That's nothing to do with Coriolis, Anthony. It's only ever going to be an observation from a non-inertial reference frame. That's got nothing to conserve, because your observation is what's described in Coriolis, not what the bullet does. Because when I describe it, I'm describing a lamppost that's concrete into the ground. You don't need to describe anything about the energy it's conserving. It's not moving. It's all about what I observe, and I'm observing the lamppost seem to move. Therefore, every Coriolis description, always, ever, must be described from the non-inertial reference frame. There's nothing to conserve, and if they start describing what they're conserving, they're not describing Coriolis, because it can only ever be described from a non-inertial frame of reference. There you go.
You are absolutely right. However, the phraseology is very confusing. So the easier way, which you did describe this as a short circuit, I'm going to say it wasn't. It's convoluted. I'm going to say the easier way to describe it is that from the rotating thing that's turning, the roundabout or the earth that we're supposed to be turning, we must see apparent deflection, but we never see it. Planes, bullets, helicopters, drones, we don't see any apparent deflection. We need to see that apparent deflection. It's like, yeah, but they're not in the sky for long, though. But planes are.
Stop. They are not in the sky. Coriolis is describing an observation from a spinning non-inertial reference frame. So when as soon as you move to that would be the plane, aren't in the sky long, you're no longer describing what I see from a non-inertial spinning reference frame. You're describing the trajectory of a bullet in an inertial. That's not Coriolis, Anthony. So as soon as you move into the inertial reference frame to describe what a projectile does, or describe what the lamppost does, that's not me observing the lamppost or me observing the plane. You're moving away from an observation. So the Coriolis effect is always the description of the observation, and that observation takes place in a non-inertial frame of reference. Therefore, there's never going to be momentum maintained or the angular retention of anything, because we're describing what we see, and it's always described from a non-inertial frame of reference. So I don't care what the bullet's doing, I don't care what the lampost's doing, I don't care what the drone's doing. If I take a bullet, right, in the example, and I say, right, the bullet seems to take a curved trajectory because I rotate underneath. Oh, didn't I mention that I just happened to perch the bullet on top of a lamppost that's concreted into the ground, and I still observed it seeming to curve? It didn't matter that the bullet wasn't moving, because the observation is all that matters. It's from the non-inertial, and therefore the inertia is irrelevant of anything ever when describing Coriolis.
So again, just to simplify it again, is that me? Just to simplify it again, it's that we need to observe it on our Earth if we're turning. That's where we see the effect. Now, at the end of the day, we don't see it, but they always come up with excuse after excuse after excuse. Any excuse that they provide is arguing against the Coriolis arguments, because we need to see that deflection.
Precisely. With that, I'll say if you are watching this on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you're watching this live on the Nathan Oakley 1980 channel, this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on the premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a day! What a lovely day!